Hi, my name is Shelby. Let's talk about my favorite books of 2025. 2025 was a pretty good reading year for me. I read 54 books. I had a goal of 40, so I met that pretty easily. But I did get, I had a lot of good 5-star and 4-star, 4.5-star reads. So very exciting. I read a lot of new authors, a lot of new series, and most importantly, I actually focused on finishing the series that I started, which is kind of another goal of mine for this year. I really struggle with finishing the last book. It doesn't matter if it's book 3 or book 7 or whatever. I just I don't want it to end. So I really tried to focus on that last year. Today I'm going to be sharing my top 10 books. They're not really in any order, and I do have one honorable mention as well. So let's dive right in. Okay, first book I want to talk to you about is The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch. I have started this book and probably read the first 100 pages 5 times. And finally this year I was like, no, I'm doing it. My partner keeps telling me I'm going to love it. I have to get through it. And I did love it. And it was fantastic. And I'm in the middle of book 2 now. So I'll get back to you with how I feel about that. But this is a heist story. You're following Locke Lamora, who from a very young age is an extremely proficient thief. And he kind of gets picked up by a thief master that lives in town and eventually forms his own crew. And so you kind of time skip a lot in this book between when he was younger and growing up and learning his skills and kind of pulling off bigger and bigger heists to present day, where he's older and again, he has his own crew. He has a young thief in training that he's taken on, and they're trying to pull off the craziest heist ever. And honestly, this book was so much fun. I laughed out loud a lot reading it. I audibly gasped. I cried. I literally at one point, I'm not going to say any spoilers, but there's 2 pages in a row where 2 crazy things happen. And I paused and looked back at my partner and was like, what just happened? What did he just do? Just insane. Kept me on my toes. I didn't anticipate any of the twists that were coming. It was just fun. I will say the language in it is a little bit rough around the edges. Locke's group is called, I think, the Gentlemen Bastards. And so, they've been trained on how to kind of get by and pass as society members, but they're rough and tumble boys and they don't care. So yeah, this was a really fun read. Honestly, I can't wait to see where this rest of the series goes. I know it's not done yet, so I have time to catch up still, but yeah, just a blast, honestly. The next book I want to talk about is probably in my top 3 of favorite books of this last year, and that is The Doll Makers by Lynn Buchanan. This was a real surprise to me. I think I found it by a random recommendation from a book talker and picked it up, and I just read it at exactly the right time. You're following a girl named, I think Sean is how you say it, and her whole life she's wanted to be a doll maker. So you live in this world of one. There's dolls that either fight against an enemy called the Shad or become really beautiful artesian objects and kind of help out around the house and are there to play with kids. And so Sean is a doll maker and is desperate to make battle dolls. She wants to be out fighting the Shad, and she is one of the youngest doll makers ever to be tested. She does not get the results that she is anticipating and kind of flies into a crazy fit of rage. And so she's been an apprentice, and her master is basically look, that was unacceptable behavior. I'm sending you to this really small village called Webb, where I have a friend who I think you should talk to and kind of study under and see what you can learn and just see how you feel about things. And so she goes and, lots of things kind of happen. This book really took me by surprise because it's fantasy, but it also felt kind of horror-y. Truly there were some parts where I was just unsettled. The concept of these dolls and what you find out the Shad is quite disturbing. And I will say all of the side characters in this one are so lovable. I think I actually like them more than the main character, Sean. She's difficult and she's passionate. She's young. She really, really believes in what she's been working towards. And so when that doesn't happen, understandably she's upset. But yeah, really, really beautiful story. Deals with kind of some past trauma and goals and expectations and how people kind of fit into society and what happens if you're like the odd one out. And yeah, I really, really loved this. I ended up subscribing to this author's newsletter, and she sent a little novella out that follows one of the side characters in this, and it's kind of her backstory. And it was just as beautiful. So yeah, I can't wait to see what else this author comes out with. This is a standalone technically, but it does say that it's from the Fallen Peaks world. So I hope we get more. There were definitely some things I think that were left unanswered that I really need more details on. So this next book was also one that I really loved last year, like just a good time. And that is A Master of Jinn by P. Djèlí Clark. I've read almost everything that this author's put out by now. And honestly, it's all amazing. It's all very good in its own right. I believe this is a standalone, but was inspired by a couple of short stories that he put out. But this is just fun. It's set in like an alternate Egypt in like a steampunk future kind of. And you're following one of the youngest agents ever to be accepted working for like the supernatural antiquities and alchemy department. And the story picks up with a very, very wealthy secret brotherhood all being completely murdered in their own like meeting room. And so you're following the agent as she kind of tries to figure out what's going on. She has a super hot girlfriend named Siti, who is really cool in her own right, is one of my favorite characters, like definitely has some interesting magic and some interesting worldviews. And yeah, it's just kind of like a fun fantasy murder mystery in this steampunk Egypt world that I had a great time with. Agent Fatma is a really entertaining character. She loves to look good. She loves to dress up. Like the amount of descriptions about what she was wearing and how sharp she looked, no matter what kind of situation she was going into, was really fun. Definitely kind of a unique take on a main character that I've ever read. Again, it has a queer storyline, and yeah, it was just honestly a blast. I really, really, really hope that P. Djèlí Clark puts some more books out in this series. All right, next on the list is a book that I have talked about in my previous video, but I'll mention it again here, and that is Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. What a beautiful fantasy book. This is such like a whimsical little, I hesitate to call it just a love story because it's really a story about like coming into your own and confidence and found family and like how to kind of be a leader and get things done. And I love this book. Brandon Sanderson writes all of his books for the most part, in the same Cosmere, so in kind of the same universe, but we're following new characters on this world where there's different types of spores, and these spores can do different things. So on Tress's planet, they're green spores, and if they get wet from any kind of liquid, they like explode into a bunch of foliage. And so it's very dangerous. And Tress lives on this tiny rock in the sea and kind of just like, I don't know, she's content to hear stories from travelers that come and bring her like cute cups that they've collected. She's really in love with their island's king's son, so the prince, who, always pretends he's like the gardener or something, but he really is the prince. And they have a very wholesome, loving relationship, and he ends up being kidnapped by an evil sorceress. And so Tress ends up finding herself on a ship that she's kind of outsmarted her way onto, and she's trying to go and save her man. And she has never sailed before. She doesn't know anything about the crew she ends up with. It's crewed by like a very, very dangerous captain, and it's just really refreshing to see like a young character who doesn't want to go out and do what she's doing, but she knows she has to, and is just so eager to learn new things and to be like, well, no one else is going to do this, so I'll do it and then make it better. And she really just wants to like get back to her guy and go back to their little rock in the sea. And it's funny, it is told through a character in other Sanderson novels who you might know named Whit or named Hoyd. He's ridiculous in this and a very good narrator. So definitely recommend if you haven't read Brandon Sanderson before or you're new to the fantasy genre, I think this is a really, really good starting point. The next read, I think, made it on this list because I just read it at the perfect time during like Halloween era, but that is The Executioners 3 by Susan Dennard. Now, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of sprayed edges in books, but I actually thought the black and the like foliage was kind of cool on this one. And again, this was a real surprise to me. I just picked this up as like a moody, fun fall read, and I had a blast. Again, I don't really read a lot of YA anymore either, and this was just so fun. So you follow a young girl named Freddie, and one night, like out in the woods, she thinks that something terrible is happening, calls the police, and it turns out it was just like a bunch of kids partying. And so she has kind of a weird reputation and is really just like an outcast with her best friend. She's really into like the X-Files and Scooby-Doo and like weird paranormal stuff, and stuff like that starts happening in her town. And the next day after that party that got crashed, there's a murder that's been discovered in the woods. And so you follow her as she tries to like Nancy Drew sleuth her way through the mystery, and things get weird. Things definitely get a little bit more paranormal than I thought they were going to. Like I thought it was just going to be like, I don't know, like the gardener that lived down the street and like, was pretending to be like a Scooby-Doo villain, but it was like, real all the time. But it really does get kind of supernatural and weird. And I just loved all the like 90s, like weird core references in it. And yeah, perfect, very atmospheric, good fall read. And again, just like fun, not too scary, not really too horror-y. You could still read it at nighttime, I think. And yeah, it's a good one. The next books that I'm going to talk about, I don't have physical copies of because I read them on my e-reader or from the library. But the next one is Amari and the Night Brothers by B.B. Alston. And this is a middle grade, a 9 to 12 fantasy novel following a young girl named Amari whose brother, Quentin Peters, everyone thinks is dead. He went off to like this very prestigious school on scholarship. And she's really one of the only people that believes that he's still alive and that he's just missing. And so when she's contacted by this like weird secret magic society to try and help kind of learn what her brother was learning and lets her into this magic world, she realizes that she has to use that opportunity to figure out what happened to him, because she's just like not taking anyone's word for it. She's like, I know he's out there.
Hi, hello, it is Shelby. My phone storage just gave up, totally filled up, and as a result, I lost the videos for the end of explaining about Amari and the beginning of the next book, so I just quickly want to do that here. Amari and the Night Brothers, amazing middle grade fantasy series. If you want something more diverse that tackles real issues like class struggles and discrimination, I definitely recommend. It's got magical trials, it has supernatural abilities. It's just a really beautiful story and kind of take on like a magic school. So also if you've read or you have kids who have read and really enjoyed like the Nevermore series by Jessica Townsend or the Keepers books by Shannon Messenger, I think this is like a very easy sell. They will absolutely love this one. And as for the next book, I kind of picked a series. It's cheating, I know, but whatever. And that is the Tide Child trilogy. That's really hard to say. By R.J. Barker. I had such a blast with this series. You are following a man named Jordan Twinner who is having a hard time. His dad is like his world, and his dad's a fisherman. And one day while they're out at sea, his dad is murdered before his eyes. And so he gets revenge on his father's murderer, and as a result is punished by having to work on a black ship. And these black ships are kind of like the dregs of society, the outcasts. You don't want to be working on them. It's not fun. And so I think when the story picks up, like he's drunk, he's like passed out on a beach somewhere, and you end up finding a young woman named Lucky Mies who approaches him and is like, look, I will take over and captain your ship. I will become the shipwife, and you can, be my second hand or whatever, but I'm taking your ship from you, and you're going to learn how to be a better captain in the results. And Jordan like so doesn't want to do that, but also is drunk and sad and doesn't know what he's doing with his life. So he kind of is just like, well, all right, yeah, I guess this is what we're doing. And this is a world where the matriarchy is alive and well, like women are the ones in power. These ships that are out doing battle and working for the military are made of dragon bone, or like they're like water dragons. I think they're called Arachesians, who have long been since dead. And so the bone is really, really valuable. And if you manage to sink a bone ship, you can harvest that and then become super rich and have an even better ship. So that's kind of the world that we open in. And it is just a really fantastic ocean fantasy trilogy. There's also these amazing characters. I don't know if they're called like gillams, I don't know. There are these like magic birds that can basically use wind power to help with the ships. And my favorite character in the books, aside from Mies, is this bird, this like magic bird that ends up having to work on Joran's ship, has a real attitude problem, like does not want to serve, does not want to help, and is very dangerous and feisty. And I just, that whole storyline with the birds is so interesting and different from any other fantasy series I've read. And the growth and kind of where you start in book 1 to where you end up at the end of book 3 is wild.
R.J. Barker did this really interesting thing throughout that I later saw confirmed in a book talk video, but you definitely pick up on, and that's he uses repetition a lot. And so kind of like in a sea shanty where you repeat the same verse over and over again to further the story. And kind of like similar to the rhythms of the sea, right? Like waves are lapping up against the shore consistently. Like he really uses that repetition and that rhythm in his writing. And I've never actually read anything like that, especially not a fantasy series. So again, just very unique. I really want to read some other books by him this year. And I definitely would recommend, if you like seafaring fantasy, like Adventures of Amin al-Sarafi, pirates, kind of anything like that, this is a must read. Next book from 2025 that I loved, another one I don't have, but that is Wings of Starlight by Allison Saft. Now, this is a Disney fairy book, so it is following the world of Pixie Hollow, and if you grew up with those books and those films, and I think the show, then you'll probably be familiar with this story following a young woman named Clarion. I did not grow up with those things. That was a little after kind of my time, and so I didn't know any of the characters or the story going into this, and I was very surprised by the ending. Let me just say, like, I'm pretty sure I cried and then was kind of mad. But I still loved it. And I really felt like I was in the world of Pixie Hollow. Allison Saft's writing about like this environment was just so beautiful. I wish she would write more books, or I wish we would get more fairy books, because honestly, this was fantastic. You're following a young fairy named Clarion, and she is supposed to be having her coronation come up to take over, I think is like the new queen of Pixie Hollow or Fairyland or something like that. But some monsters start kind of invading into her homeland, and they think that they're coming from like the winter part of this world where none of the other fairies venture. They wouldn't be able to survive there. It's way too cold. And the people that live there and kind of rule that area also don't cross over into their realm. So they're kind of off limits. And she decides that she, as like the future ruler of this land, has to go out and figure out what's going on. And instead of meeting a monster, ends up meeting another young fairy named, I think Mallory is how you say it. And they kind of team up to figure out what's going on. There's absolutely a romance. It's just so beautiful. Like, there were times reading this book, and this doesn't really happen to me that often, but there were times reading it where I was there. I was on the bridge between the spring and the winter lands, seeing them, and like the dust motes float around, and like it was just kind of magical, and really, really good, cozy little read. So if you do like that world and you haven't read this yet, you have to. It's so beautiful. And if you don't know anything about that world and you go into it blind, you'll still be able to figure out what's going on. It's very easy to follow. And I just loved it. My last favorite book of 2025 is actually an adult romance. It's one of the only ones I read last year, and it was easily 5 stars. And that is Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This is the first book in, I think, the Skyland series. It's the only one I've read so far, but I will be reading the next ones hopefully this year. And yeah, kind of out of left field for me. It's a second chance romance, which I don't typically love. But 2 of my favorite romance books ever are second chance romance, which is it Funny Story? No, Happy Place by Emily Henry, and now Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. You follow a couple who are together, are married, they have children, and then a really, really awful tragedy happens, and they kind of can't pull themselves out of it enough to stay together, and so they end up separating. And if I remember correctly, you kind of get pieces of the past told in conjunction with the present. The main character, Yasmin, she is like a businesswoman. She's really trying to come out of her grief of what's happened and like make moves and get on with her life. And she has kind of a difficult child that she has a hard time connecting with, who loves her now estranged ex-husband. And they kind of end up having to work together in this business plan that she has. And yeah, it was very beautiful. It deals with a lot of heavy topics. Check your trigger warnings beforehand, but it made me cry a lot, and it made me really think and kind of reflect on relationships and grief and trauma and, like all those really happy things. But it was beautiful. I love Yasmin's friends in this as well. And I think this is one of those series where the next book you follow one of her friends, and then you follow the next one in the third book. But yeah, I'm excited to continue on with this. Kennedy Ryan's writing is outstanding, and I think in the romance category of like adult romances that I've read is absolutely a top tier writer. So I can't wait to get into more of her books this year. Okay, and my honorable mention for 2025 is a book called The River Has Roots by Amal El-Matar, I believe. This is one of the authors who co-authored This Is How You Lose the Time War, which is a sapphic sci-fi like epic love story, but it's quite short. It's really easy to get through, and it's so beautiful. I read it a few years ago. I think it's one of the most kind of amazing writing achievements I've ever read. So I wanted to pick up The River Has Roots. It sounded different. It's definitely more fantasy based, and it's very fairy tale. So we're following 2 sisters who live in this land, and I believe one of them has someone like very aggressively pursuing her, and she's just so not interested, and ends up falling for someone from the land of fairy. And you kind of have to follow their journey. It's just some of the most beautiful writing I've ever read. Like truly, you feel like you're reading an old folktale fairy tale, but like on cocaine. Like the writing is just out of this world. It's so beautiful. It's a real celebration of like words and meaning and how to create a beautiful sentence, I guess. Like, I don't know, just the writing is just so stunning. And the story is a really lovely story between 2 sisters and kind of what you do for your family and for love. It has a nice, satisfying ending. It's a pretty short read as well. So if you want a standalone fantasy, I think this is a really good option if you're trying to, like get through your reading count or you need a short little break. Again, I would say check the trigger warnings. There are a couple of scenes in this that are a little bit dark. But yeah, just a really beautiful story. It would have made it into my favorite top 10, but to be honest, I kind of feel like reading it, I was in like a fever dream. And I don't really remember a lot about it other than the writing, which is just so stunning. So it didn't crack the top 10, but I definitely still recommend it. I'm thinking about maybe doing a reread of it and taking it very slow and just really like sitting with some of the words, because I know I want to go back in and like annotate it. And I don't annotate books ever. So to want to go in and do that really tells me that it's like it's an outstanding book. So yeah, that is my top books of 2025. Please let me know what your favorites were. I know this video is a little bit late. We are in February already, but I really wanted to still put it out there because I had a great reading year last year. And this year is already shaping up to be quite good as well. So yeah, let me know your favorites. If you've read any of these and you liked them or you have them on your TBR, please let me know. If you have recommendations based on some of these things that I said, also please let me know because I'm always looking for new reads. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your month. All right, bye guys.